Hey everybody. So we're going to talk about Tom Wilson for a little bit here. And sorry to all the Tom Wilson haters out there, but he is lighting it up offensively since returning from his suspension. Before we get into it, I just want to say if you're not yet a subscriber to this channel, please hit that subscribe button. I do videos on topics from across the NHL, so as long as you're a fan of hockey and a fan of the NHL, there are videos here for you. So please hit that subscribe button and follow along. Thank you. Tom Wilson obviously missed most of this season so far because of a long suspension, which was originally 20 games and got cut down to 14 for a hit in the preseason. But since returning from that suspension, in the 8 games since coming back, Tom Wilson has been not only the Tom Wilson that we know and remember from his first few years in the league, but he's been an offensive powerhouse really for the first time in his career. So here, let's get into the stats here. In the 8 games since returning, Tom Wilson has 6 goals and 6 assists for 12 points and is +6 with 11 penalty minutes. So the penalty minutes haven't really come yet. I'm sure he'll get into that more as the season goes on. But the points have. Oh my God, the points have. 12 points in 8 games, well over a point per game. That's by far the best he's ever looked offensively. He's playing 20-plus minutes a night on Washington's first line. With Kuznetsov out, it's Ovechkin, Backstrom, and Wilson as the top line. And when Kuznetsov comes back, it will be Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, and Wilson. But he's playing on the first line. He's playing first-line minutes, and he's producing offensively at a first-line level. We started to see the offense come with Tom Wilson a little bit last season, where in 78 games, he had 14 goals and 21 assists for 35 points, and that was his career high in points for one season, 35. And then last year in the playoffs, he also had a very good playoffs offensively, where in 21 games played, he had 5 goals, 10 assists for 15 points in 21 games. So you started to see him break through last season a little bit offensively, but nothing like what he's done this year. So Wilson made the NHL as a kid, as a teenager. He came right out of junior and made the NHL. And he did it as a fourth line, hitter and fighter. He was a tough guy. He's a very tough guy. He was a very tough guy in junior, who could also score. He could also score. He wasn't a first-round pick because he could fight. He was a first-round pick because he was a power forward. He was an old-school guy who could put up points and also rack up the penalty minutes. He hits, he fights, and he scores. Well, the offense didn't really come all that quickly for Wilson at the NHL level. He was always a good fourth-line guy. He was always willing to throw his weight around and drop the gloves and contribute that way. But the offense has been a little bit slower to come along for him. Well, now he's 24 years old. He's been in the league for 5 or 6 years now. I don't know exactly. I want to say 6. He's been in the league for a while now for a kid who's only 24 years old. But the offense is finally starting to come. And we saw it last season, and now it is exploding. Now it is taking off. Now Tom Wilson looks like a guy who can be a 20 to 25 goal scorer, who can be a 50-point guy while still being a physical presence, a power forward, a 100 penalty minute guy. And if he can become that, if he can be a 50-point in a season guy, a 60-point in a season guy, watch out, because you have the next great power forward here in Tom Wilson. Honestly, I never thought Now, this is a small sample size. This is only 8 games. We have no idea if he can do this over the course of a full season. We really won't get to see this season because he missed a good chunk of the first quarter of the year. So we may not fully know how he's going to look at over a full season until next year, but the offense is really starting to come. And I didn't know if it ever was. I thought he might, because it was just year after year after year of him, around 8, 9, 10 goals, around 20-ish, 25 points. Like, that's what he was, and then he was a big penalty minute guy, and I didn't know, maybe he was destined to forever be a fourth liner, or forever be just a fighter and a physical player. But now the offense is finally coming. It really started last year, and now it's just taking off. And if he can continue, I don't think he's going to be 12 points every 8 games all the time. But if it can continue and he can be a significant top 6 contributor offensively, then you have a very, very good power forward and a very old school player playing in the modern NHL. And there aren't a lot of guys left like Tom Wilson, like Wayne Simmons, like Milan Lucic, who have the ability to drop the gloves and throw their weight around and play physically the way that many players in the 80s and 90s did, while also scoring 50, 60 points a year. Lucic and Simmons are both on the decline. They're getting older. They're into their 30s. Their play is heading downwards. Tom Wilson's only 24. He is on a strong upward trend as far as his play goes. He could be that next generation of power forward, and they don't make them like that anymore. There's very rarely players this physical while also being able to contribute at a high level offensively left in the NHL. That's a very 80s 90s kind of play, and Wilson still does it, and it gets him in trouble sometimes, and we've seen that where he's often suspended. But if Wilson played in the 90s, he would probably have no career suspensions. Those hits he makes that get him suspended were perfectly legal and thought of as great hits. They were highlight reel great hits in the 90s. They were hits that would get him on a top 10 list, and everyone would love him. But it's 2018, and he's still trying to play that 90s style, and those hits just aren't looked at the same way anymore. They're not cheered, they're not loved, they're thought of as dirty and nasty and need to be taken out of the game. And whether you agree with that or not, that's just the way it is right now. So Wilson needs to keep himself out of trouble while still maintaining being a physical presence, because that's what he does best. And he needs to be that physical player, but he's also showing that he can be an offensive player as well. And when you put those two together, you have a dominant force in the sport of hockey. If you have someone who can be physically dominant and just flat out abusive at times, abusing the opponent physically, while also producing at a high level offensively, that is the most dominant kind of player you can get in the sport of hockey. So I hope Wilson keeps himself out of trouble. I like the guy. I think he's a throwback. I'm a big fan of physical hockey. I hope that he continues to play clean and also continues to put up good numbers and point totals, because I think he can be a very, very effective player. Very effective player if he's on the ice, but he's got to keep himself on the ice. But so far, so good since returning from suspension. No questionable hits, only 11 penalty minutes, and 12 points in 8 games. That is very, very good for Tom Wilson. So, with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media, check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the link to our merch store as well as our Patreon page are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.